The last two films I did in Great Britain were American financed and made by America. One was for MGM and the other one was for Paramount. They were both here. They weren't British movies. So they were made in 1966, and that was the end of it. That was curtains for me. Shepperton went, Pinewood went, and the money went because the Americans who had the ED plan and had all the tax allowances were sent home, right? And that's why the cinema really broke in this country, because nobody had the money. So there was Uncle Dirk left with nothing to do, and all these new children coming whizzing in, the Tom Courtneys, the Terence Stamps, the Albert Finneys, rightly, because they have to have a recharge. And what do? But I did get an offer for a commercial, which I've always refused to do, but this time I did. I thought, you know, why do it for free if they're going to pay me to see me? So they did pay me. They paid me $25,000 to run up and down the Spanish Steps.
You must forgive me. I knew I'd forgotten something.
When I got to the top of the Spanish Steps, no big deal, two ladies who came all the way from America and they paid for them, had to say to each other, oh, surely that was Dirk Bogarde I saw coming up on the Foster Grant sunshades. That was the commercial. That's what I got $25,000 for. That's all I had to do. I thought that was good. But it was in the paper that I was there, because they were all taking pictures of me running up down the Spanish Steps. And somebody called Visconti, Lucchino Visconti, saw it, sent me a script and said, well, I'd like to work with him. And that's really how The Damned started, and eventually Death in Venice. But that's really, apart from Jean Renoir, that's how, in 1967, my future was mapped for him, by running up and down the Spanish Steps in a pair of Foster Grant sunshades. I don't regret that at all. The film I did with Visconti, The Damned, was cut to ribbons. We had no money, ran out of them. But I had decided then and there never to come back. And so there I stayed. And my life completely changed. So while all the boys were getting on with it here in Bolton and Wigan and stations north, I was whooping it up in Tunis and Algiers and wherever I wanted to all over Europe, making movies for Europe, but making European movies. And that was vastly exciting. I think I did my time. I remember leaving England with most of my worldly goods, but in particular I remember the customs officer at Dover. Oh, he said, would you like to get out of your car, Mr. Bogarde? So I got out of my car, I was getting on the ferry, and I had another car, my stand-in Arnold was driving full of my books and papers and things. He said, how much money have you got on you? I asked, so I told him, £350 each. We weren't allowed more in those days. And he said, is that all? And I said, yes. He said, how long are you going for then? May I ask that? And I said, you may. He said, well, you haven't answered my question. So I said, I'm going forever. And there was a long silence. I remember thinking, God, I've done it now. And he simply said, well, £325 isn't going to last you long, is it? So I said, no, I anticipate working there. He said, well, it's all right for some, isn't it? Would I look at your tyres? So they stripped the two cars. We missed two ferries. And it was just the English saying, well, sod you. If you're going to leave remembering. And I didn't come back for over 2 years. Anthony Forward had become my agent in 1938-39, but my sudden success after the war as a movie actor meant that representing me became a full-time job for him. And my decision to leave England obviously had a great effect on him too. I made this decision really through a lawyer who said, if you hang on here any longer, you'll be ruined. Tax-wise. I would advise you to leave, so I left. When I told Forward this, after all these years of management, he looked at me rather helpless and said, well, Christ, all I've done is look after you for all these years, because he turned down everybody else. Because I had become so big, much quicker than we even thought or imagined, and his life was cut out looking after me. So if I'm not going to work anymore, What's he going to do? His son was grown up and married, and okay. He had no responsibilities. He was divorced. And I said, well, look, I can't drive, which is a good excuse as any. I'd killed some people in a very bad car crash and lost my nerve, quite simply. And I said, well, give it a try. Come out with me. I'm going to find somewhere to live. I'm probably going to work with Visconti. Come and try it. I need you to help me over that first contract anyway, because I can't understand Italian, neither can you. But we will be able to do something together. We'll find an English-speaking agent, which we did, and from there it went on. Because I couldn't actually work without him. I couldn't operate. I didn't know how to sign a check. I was never allowed any money. I never did sign a check. I never had a credit card. I still haven't. I can now write a check, and I do carry loose change in my pocket. I never did. I was never allowed to, because I was so stupid that, in fact, lawyers and people say, well, you know, you just let Ford do everything because he will settle everything, which he did. But he was the front guy for me. If I said, look, I don't want to wait another 6 weeks to do this shot, or he would like air conditioning, it's 48 degrees or whatever. He did all that kind of crap, and all I had to do was go be Dorothy adorable to everybody on the set and do my job, which is very important. We became glued. And when I made it quite clear to Ford, and he understood, I said, either you stay, and, you know, he said, well, I can stay because there's nothing else for me to do. I couldn't take on, and we named 3 people that he could have worked for, who were anxious for him to work for them. And he said, I think, I'm older than, he's 8 years older than me. He said, I'm 58, and in a little time I'll be 60. I'm going to, if it's all right with you, I'll hang on. So he did the other side of my life, insofar as he did the mowing and the heavy mowing, and he dealt with the tractors, he dealt with the sheep, he dealt with all the other stuff, and with the publishers, who are now my new world, with books, with contracts. I couldn't read a contract. All I could read really was Eisel on a toilet roll. I mean, I was pretty dumb. That's how it was, but it was an entire world. And the world finished literally one day when he had come back from shopping in the market, and I was busy on a book. I leant out of my studio window and I said, have you been to the doctor? Because he had a bad foot, which had started to hurt him in Hollywood a bit, on the film with Glenda Jackson. And he said, yeah, yes, it's nothing. And he was undoing the luggage, the dogs were all, you know, shopping, and the dogs were all leaping around him. And he said, it's nothing, it's just it's a slight touch of Parkinson's. That was it. He didn't know, but I knew that was it. Because that was the finish. Because Parkinson's doesn't get better. And if I couldn't drive and he couldn't drive, he could do the heavy machines and all that stuff. You know, the 22-year idol, or idol, whatever you call it, had to finish in time, which he did about 2 years later. I knew the moment that Parkinson's was mentioned and confirmed that you don't get a touch of Parkinson's, so you've got to be real and grown up. Okay? And that means that your life has got to alter again. I wasn't prepared for cancer at the same time. So a double burden was a kind of full reward for the years of pleasure. And I knew they had to finish. And when they finished, and I got rid of the farm, in 3 weeks, it was a lifetime gone, because I really had my building plot, my burial plot. I had my plot in the cemetery. You have to buy it and appeal to the mayor and all that. And I'd been a resident for, I think, about 4 years before I left. So, I mean, I was there. I had no claim in my mind of ever coming back. But you can't reckon with those things. And he wanted to come back to die, naturally enough, with his son and with his grandson by this time, and with the rest of his family around him. Quite right. And also, he did say, you know, I don't really want to face the end of my life in great pain, which, if it's going to be painful, paralyzed, if I'm going to be paralyzed, in a foreign language, up a mountain. What can we do? What can I do? What can I do? Except get him out. So I did. You can do it, if you have to. You'll get a stroke in the end, but you have to do it. Because, you know, the one thing you are given, which I learned as a young boy, is that you are given life. And if you watch it crumbling before you, as I had to do forward, if you've seen it as a young man, as I did in the war, then you realize that what you've got is a slender flame. And you've got to hang on to that like hell. I had a stroke myself, unfortunately. I mean, this is a story for all time, right? You've got it. It's a great script. But when I had my stroke, until that moment, I was always going home. I was never going to come stay here. I'd have sold up everything as I did, and then I'd gone back. But after, if you've had one stroke, you don't want another one. And I'm 71 now. And you get a little bit anxious that it might happen again. And it happened so suddenly. I was down a staircase one minute with my head between the banisters. I don't want it to happen too far away from people I love, my family, my brothers and sisters. So I stayed put. So I'm waiting.